Hi, everyone. If you do not know me, I am April. I am the Cultural Arts Coordinator here at the City of Leawood. And I'm very, very excited to see such a wonderful turnout. You guys are in for a big treat. I saw the show yesterday. Absolutely fabulous. If you don't know Actors Choice, they are a division of the Senior Barn Players. And for the last several years, the Leawood Stage Company has been inviting them here to perform because we think this is a wonderful opportunity for them. They've performed both here in the Oak Room and also at the One Room Schoolhouse in Ironwoods Park. So if you were around in June on Saturdays, you've seen these actors do this first-person presentation. Sometimes they do one-act shows. They do a variety of material, but this show, they've all written their own monologues about some wonderful people that helped shape Kansas City. So I think you're going to be thrilled. This is pretty amazing. Anyway, I do want to tell you what is next for the Leawood Stage Company. We're going to be doing Nuncrackers, which is a very funny musical at the Lodge. Tickets are on sale now online. So hopefully you'll come back to the Lodge and enjoy that. And then we're doing something very different. We're partnering with Vita Dance Company, which is a professional dance group. These flyers are out on the treat table, so when you leave and you have your cookies, pick up some flyers. So they are doing a reimagined Nutcracker ballet. Takes place here in Kansas City instead of France. And so you will recognize some of the characters that Clara meets on her journey through her little Nutcracker story. So anyway, I hope that you can come back to that if you've got grandkids or kids or neighbors that can't sit through a long performance of the Nutcracker. This is kind of perfect. It's abbreviated. So hopefully you'll come back for that. All right, enough of the commercial announcements. I'm happy that you're here, and I am going to turn this over to Actors Choice. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Hal Rightwell. I'm a reporter and a news hound. I can tell you, today I want to introduce you to some legends. Some legends who have helped shape our fair city. Kansas City, gateway to the Great Plains, a city of makers and doers, of people who have, through their talent, philanthropy, created a place that includes the finest hotels, beautiful neighborhoods, a number of homegrown companies, and a vigorous support of the arts, especially jazz. Now, I want you to meet the legends.
Aware of Longview Community College?
Yes.
Longview Lake?
Yes.
Longview Road?
Yes.
Well, in 1911, R.A. Long bought 1,780 acres in southern Jackson County, and he built Longview Farms, which consisted of a lovely mansion, gardens, a greenhouse, a small chapel, 3 horse barns, an indoor-outdoor arena, many houses for their workers, a half-mile racetrack with a grandstand that would seat 1,500 people, and many other buildings. And how do I know all that?
How?
R.A. Long was my father. I am Lula Long Combs. I bet you don't know about Columbus, Kansas.
No.
I was born there January 30th, 1881. And I have one older sister, and we lived there very happily. My sister and I have been close, Sally Americas, for many years. But when we were young and playing with all our cousins there, we were somewhat tomboyish. But Sally was always much more ladylike than I ever was. Even when we were adults, she would be somewhat concerned that I might do something to embarrass the family. We were very lucky to have very loving and caring parents. I will admit that they were somewhat indulgent, but they taught us to respect all people, help those less fortunate than we, follow the 10 commandments, and never smoke, drink, or cuss, and always be kind to animals. My father likes to tell the story that my first sentence to him was, "Please buy me a pony." And over the years, he bought me many. My mother tells this story of when I was 4, maybe 5, I'd be playing out in the yard and they couldn't locate me. And so they'd have to go searching. And a lot of the time they would find me in our barn sitting on our horse Bill. And they couldn't figure out how such a small child could get on such a big horse. One day they followed me and they discovered my secret. Bill would put his head down, I'd straddle his neck, he'd lift his head, and I would slide down to his back and sit there and just be happy. But well, my father's lumber business was growing rapidly with his partner, Victor Bell, and they decided that Kansas City would have more opportunities for it. So then we moved to Kansas City. Well, I'll have to brag a little. Long Bell Lumber Company became the largest privately owned lumber company in the whole world. So there I was, 10 years old, I moved to Kansas City. And our first home was on Independence Boulevard, and we lived there quite happily for many years. But then our stable got crowded and my father wanted to build, and so we planned another. He started with the stable, of course, because we needed more room for the horses and the tack and the buggies and the sleighs and everything. And he built Corinthian Hall in 1911. And a few years after his death, we deeded that place to the Kansas City Historical Society. And it is now the Kansas City Museum. Corinthian Hall on Gladstone Boulevard. I hope you all go visit. Well, when I was 15 years old, I entered my first horse show at Fairmount Park in Kansas City, Missouri, in the 5-gaited class, riding side saddle on my horse, Redbuck. And I won a blue ribbon. So soon after that, I talked to my father and explained that whenever I was at school, I got these terrible headaches. So he let me quit school. And then I had more time with my horses. I could show more locally, nationally, and internationally. Well, then my first showing in Madison Square Garden in 1913, I caused somewhat of a sensation by driving in the roadster class. Women were not supposed to drive in harness classes. They were thought to be too weak. But I drove in that class. First woman to do so there, and I won. And I found that there in the East, they drove kind of slowly. But I drove my good speed, and the crowd loved it. And while I was showing one time in New York, an agent from Barnum and Bailey Circus contacted me and invited me to join the circus. Well, I was tempted, but I declined. But you've heard of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel there in New York? They named a drink after me. Just a girl from Missouri. That was exciting. Oh, we've shown horses all over the United States, Canada, and even England. But the American Royal here in Kansas City has always been first in my heart. It got its name American Royal first in 1901, but they didn't get to their permanent place where they have now until 1922. I've always tried to promote the Royal wherever I've traveled, but I've been given a lot of awards or prizes over the years. But the most special event happened in 1961 at the American Royal. As I was entering this ring with my ponies, there was a 10-minute standing ovation for me. I was so touched. It was really wonderful. Well, one year after we'd shown horses in London, and my horse King and I had won a blue ribbon over the English favorite, our family was touring Europe. And my cousin Meg was with me. And we met a lot of lovely young ladies and gentlemen. And when we were going home, when we were getting on the ship, one of the reporters asked my cousin, "Well, did you get any proposals?" And she said, "Oh, dozens," which was a big exaggeration. We only got a few. But there was one nice young man, a Polish count. He continued sending flowers and letters after we returned home, and then he came to visit, and he proposed again. So I took him out to see my favorite horse, Revelation. And you know what? Revy tried to nip him. Well, knowing what good sense Revelation had, I declined his offer to become a countess. Oh, I've been very involved with my horses during the years, and marriage was not a priority with me. But when I was 36 years old, I happily married Robert Pryor Combs. I'd known him for several years, and we were married at Corinthian Hall in June, and his father conducted the ceremony. He'd been our minister at the Independence Avenue Christian Church for quite a few years, a family church. We were not blessed with any children, but we had a happy marriage based on love and equality and respect. And my dear Pryor was a man ahead of his time because he didn't want me to be a stay-at-home wife. He encouraged me to go on showing my horses and training them and being involved. And he could even smile if someone happened to call him Mr. Long. I've been asked why I name all my harness horses with names ending in I-O-N. Well, Champion ends in I-O-N, and they were all champions, such as Revelation and Citation and Reputation, oh, and many, many more. I've always loved all my horses, but Revelation was always special. I had him for 26 years. He was such a gentleman and a champion and so lovable. And he was the most naturally talented horse I've ever known. Well, he won more than 60 blue ribbons, and he was a crowd pleaser whenever he was shown. And at his retirement showing, they had a special ceremony for him with music and speeches, and they put a lovely flower wreath over his neck. Oh, I was so touched. I've never wanted to love another horse as much as I loved him. He's buried here on the farm, and he has a nice stone marker on his grave. Well, I've always tried to promote opportunities for women, whether in the ring or in daily life. In the ring, I pushed for women to be able to show in any class they wanted, not just one's designated women. And also for women to be able to show their saddle horses riding astride, no side saddle. Oh, I will say that often I tried to wear different outfits for each class that I showed in. But if you were in buggies, you wore a skirt. And another thing I liked to do was I had my two little Boston Terriers, Mary Legs and Gin, and they would ride with me when I showed my ponies. And they were a big crowd pleaser too. And they became the trademark for our stables. Over the years, we gave many, organized and gave many charity horse shows through the years for various groups, such as the American Legion, the Red Cross, Children's Mercy Hospital, and Abused Animal Association. It was just our way to give back to the community. I've been asked about my philosophy of life. Well, it's respect your fellow man, hold God in reverence, and be kind to animals. And if you're ever feeling a little blue or grumpy, a good horse, a country road, a long ride, and then everything seems bright again.
My life has been a gift. Frequently challenging, but ultimately fulfilling. I was born in Kentucky in about 1860. I'm always a little vague about that date. My mama died when I was just a babe, leaving me to be raised by my older sister. Now, Alice was only about 8 years older than I was, but she became my mother and the support of my life. My papa was a man of principle, and he instilled us with his ideals. He encouraged us to get a high school education, even though most girls didn't. not at that time. And he supported our aspirations toward further education as well. But you know, it was my sister, Alice, who was my biggest supporter there. She really believed in me. She worked as a teacher to put me through college and then through medical school. And after I'd gotten my medical training, I returned the favor and put her through dental school. We both worked in the medical field in Wisconsin for a short time before moving to Kansas City, where our lives were to take a significant turn. Oh, it didn't happen all at once. I mean, it was disheartening in the beginning. It was 1897 when we tried to open a medical practice in downtown Kansas City, except no one came. No one would seek medical treatment from a woman. Not in the beginning. No hospitals would hire us. You know, it was a kind of discrimination that I would have to juggle in one form or another throughout my life. Now, the turning point came when a bartender in the West Bottoms approached us about a sick and starving child. The mother was destitute and had been trying to give her away. You know, when we saw that little girl, we knew she was very sick and probably wouldn't recover. But we took her on. Fortunately, we were able to rent a bed in a maternity hospital to care for her. And that's how it began, one bed at a time. We called it the Mercy Bed. Miraculously, that little girl recovered, and soon other children came to take her place, and we rented more beds. They were poor children, and we cared for them without charge, because no one deserves care more than a helpless child. You know, when the maternity hospital went bankrupt in 1899, Alice and I were able to buy it and renamed it the Free Bed Fund Association for Crippled, Ruptured, and Dysfunctional Children. Okay, maybe it was a little too descriptive. But we treated everyone, regardless of their ability to pay. Oh, we were the subject of lots of scorn. The Kansas City Star wrote a scathing article about us, two sisters trying to open a hospital. But we were also admired, and the donations began coming in. You know, in the early days, I just put a sign out in front of the building telling people what we needed. Little things, you know, towels and sheets, canned goods, and the people would drop the items in the basket. Then in 1904, we were able to move out of that dusty old building into a new facility on Highland Drive. It had 5 beds, and we renamed it Mercy Hospital in honor of the Mercy Bed. And then finally, it was in 1917 that we were able to truly realize our dreams. We built a facility with a whole new concept. I mean, it was especially designed for children. It had playrooms and classrooms, a sun porch. Why, it even had a small research facility for the study of children's diseases, and we christened it Children's Mercy Hospital. Well, I say we, but it was really just me. Well, no. Before that really momentous occasion, I had had 2 great personal losses. My husband, James Ira Richardson, died in 1908, and Alice, my beloved sister, my medical partner and my mainstay, died in 1913. The loss of Alice was huge. Well, she was the diplomat of our team. People just gravitated toward her. She'd shake their hands and they'd give her money. I didn't fool myself. Diplomacy was not my strong suit. But our hospital survived on donations. So I took up the banner, giving speeches, attending functions, and writing for the Mercy Messenger. It was a difficult undertaking for someone not gifted in tact. Well, women, after all, were supposed to be in the home, not practicing medicine. So instead of promoting myself as a doctor, I emphasized my charity work. Now this was a respectful pursuit. Women couldn't be professionals, but they could do charity. The emphasis had to be not on me, but on the work. You know, it was also prohibited to ask for donations, not outright. Instead, I had to inform the public on what we were actually doing. And for this, the Mercy Messenger was a wonderful vehicle. It was a hospital newspaper, the bulletin we sent out to all interested parties. Through it, I was able to educate the public. There was just so much ignorance around medical practices, especially around germs and the spread of disease. Well, I tried to talk to people in a language I thought they could understand. It was also important to give them specific examples of how our practices were succeeding, even when others might not. I mean, that's what we were about. It wasn't frills, it was results. It was also important to tell the public about the children we serve, to depict them as human beings. You know, so many of the affluent looked at the poor as undeserving, and our population was poor. So, and many of them thought of the parents as slovenly and lazy, and well, maybe sometimes that was the case, but you know, most of our parents were employed and hardworking, and they cared about their children. They just couldn't make ends meet. And so we needed to inform the public about this. Sometimes we'd invite the donors into the hospital to meet the children that they helped. And sometimes they'd leave with tears and a soft spot in their hearts when they saw how much their contributions had meant. Giving to the children couldn't be seen as an obligation. You know, it wasn't a duty, it was a blessing. I wanted the hospital to be a place for all children, regardless of sex, religion, ethnicity, or ability to pay. That's what I wanted. And it's what I almost got, but not quite. Hard as I tried to open up a ward for Negro children, I just wasn't able to. It was the board, the donors, they wouldn't permit it. However, there was a Negro hospital in Kansas City, Wheatley Provident Hospital, and by working with the doctors at Wheatley, I was able to improve the standards there and actually set up a model ward for children at Wheatley, which I considered an extension of Children's Mercy and a source of pride. You know, all of my life, I have been told that women are not supposed to be doctors. They are especially not supposed to be surgeons. Yet I am both. As a surgeon, I repair facial deformities, hair lips and cleft palates. It's painstaking work, but it's gratifying. You know, how a person looks and talks affects every aspect of their being, of their sense of who they are. When we see our patients cured of disease and deformity, we witness them growing into themselves. What greater gift could there be? Oh, I never tell anyone my age. You know, if you tell them your age, they will want to retire you, and I intend to continue working until the day I die. Catherine Barry Richardson, did perform surgery just 2 days before she died in 1933 when she was well into her 70s. The previous year, Mercy Hospital had treated 22,000 children, with Catherine rarely off the grounds. To many, she was a saint. Children's Mercy Hospital today on Gillum Road has continued to expand into $1 billion a year business and a major research institution. And in recent years, USA Today named it one of the top 10 children's hospitals in the United States. Thank you.
Can't believe it. I'm about to go on my first date since my divorce. I am so excited, but nervous. Can you believe it? The Mary Lou Williams, jazz great, is afraid of a little old date. I hope you don't mind the music playing. What you're listening to is my original song, Scorpio, from my album, Zodiac Suite. Woo. When that album debuted in 1945, Lincoln Hall, New York City, it was an instant success. Why, you see, it was in 12 parts, and a 12-part composition was unheard of back in the day. Why, Benny Goodman called it a jazz masterpiece. Matter of fact, he had me play the whole darn album on his night at Carnegie Hall. Oh yeah, I've played Carnegie Hall many a time. Yes, played the piano for thousands of people around the world. But I don't get it. I'm barely holding my composure because of this little date. Hey, do I have on enough lipstick? See, when I tell you, I'm acting like a silly teenager. Oh, now that makes sense. You see, I was just 16 years old in 1927 when I had my first date. It was with my future husband, John Williams. And he was the only man that I had a date with, so that's why I'm acting so silly. Oh, ladies, John, now that was a tall drink of water. He wanted me to join his band, the Syncopators, and move with him to Memphis. Now, when he went and asked my mama for permission, what do you think she said? A big old no. Yes. She said yes. Now, to understand that answer, you need to know a little bit about my mama. Now, she was a classically trained pianist and taught me to play at the age of 2. Now, when she realized that I had a God-given talent and could play anything by ear, at 6 years old, she had me playing at private parties for money. When I was 12 years old, she had me join vaudeville. I was known across the country as the little piano girl. That probably was the worst time of my life. I used to play my set and then I'd run off stage and find me a dark corner and just cry my eyes out. I was so lonely and homesick. Well, Mama couldn't travel with me. She had to stay behind and take care of my 10 half-brothers and sisters. And of course, she needed my income. At 13, along came this young cat. Oh, he was barely getting started. His name was Duke Ellington. Now, he wanted me to play with his band, the Washtonians. So my mama said yes, because he was offering a few more nickels than what I was making on the Chitlin circuit. That's black people's term for their vaudeville. I stayed with the Duke for 3 years, and then along came Big John. Woo! He just swept me off my feet. I was so in love and couldn't believe that somebody actually loved me back. Oh, I just could not believe it. So we dated for 3 months, 26 days, and 2 hours before he proposed marriage. It took me a half a second to say yes. Well, John got his big break when Andy Kirk of the famous 12 Clouds of Joy, Andy was the band leader, asked John to be his lead saxophonist. Now, that was a big deal. So we had no problems packing up all our junk and moving to Dallas. Now, when we were in Dallas, one day John came home and said, "Babe, Andy has signed a long-term contract at the Playmore Club on 32nd and Main in Kansas City, Missouri." What? I couldn't believe my ears. Kansas City? Everybody knew that Kansas City was the jazz mecca of the nation. Why, Edward R. Murrow said, if you're looking for sinful, soulful music, then Kansas City is the place you want to be. Well, it was the place I wanted to be. I wasn't doing anything in Dallas. I couldn't find work. No band leader wanted to hire a female musician. So, Kansas City, here I come. That's where I launched my career. Now, my big break came when the 12 Clouds of Joy went for their first recording session, and the pianist didn't show up. A man. So John talked Andy into letting me have a try. Oh, I wore those piano keys out. He immediately hired me on the spot. I became the second piano soloist to the male lead. That's all right. Turned out to be a big blessing, because it gave me all the time in the world to freelance in all the major nightclubs in Kansas City. That's how I made a name for myself. First Lady of Jazz, the woman who knows how to swing a band. Well, Right now, I'm the woman who doesn't know how to swing one gentleman caller. I just need to stay focused. Remember who I am. Mary Lou Williams, first woman to have her own recording label, first woman of jazz, composer and arranger. Why, I wrote over 350 compositions for the likes of Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, Benny Goodman, Tommy Dorsey, Count Basie. You know it's after midnight. He should have been here by now. I'm up here running my mouth. I probably didn't hear him honk or something. I think I've been stood up. He was supposed to take me to the Sunset Club to hear Big Joe Turner sing the blues. Tonight is Blue Monday on 12th and Vine. You know how many Blue Mondays I've had in my life? Fighting the two isms my entire career. Racism and sexism. Constantly trying to prove that I'm worthy of being loved. Somebody. Anybody. Ever since I was a little girl. Was never allowed to be a little girl. Coldly thrown into womanhood. No direction. Without guidance. Left feeling empty. Like music with no melody. The blues without pain. But I made it, didn't I? Through the muck and the mud.
Oh, Leandra, go over there and dance with Anna Maria. Doesn't she look pretty? She's eyeing you. I know. And I want to see you do that cute little courting dance you do. Aren't they beautiful? And they're so happy. Oh, thank you, dear God, for bringing me to this moment in my life. Me, Dorothy Gallagher, born in the early days of January in 1894. You know, my father clerked at 13 in a drugstore in Pennsylvania, and then he ended up in Kansas City, president of the Faxton Gallagher Drug Company, a very wealthy man, yes. And we had a lovely home on 52nd and Rock Hill Road. But my father was a civic and a social activist, and he taught us at a very early age that affluence brings obligations. So, when I was in 8th grade at St. Francis Xavier School, and the Maryknoll nuns made their little trip recruiting for the missions, I made up my mind. Papa, I am going to become a Marigo nun, and I'm going to save all those poor, illiterate, godless people in the world. Well, fortunately, he convinced me that I should perhaps, get my education first. So when I graduated from high school, we found the only Catholic college at that time in the United States that would admit girls, and that was a Trinity College in Washington, D.C. Those feisty little French nuns were determined that girls were going to have an equal education with boys. And we did. And then on my way home, I stopped by St. Louis and got a master's degree at Washington University in social service. And then I came back to Kansas City. Father, Sister Marie Therese from Notre Dame de Sion, she just called and said they're opening up a brand new high school, an all-girls school in Hyde Park, and she asked me if I teach history. And I told her I'd be delighted. Well, that was to rule my destiny. It all began with teaching. Class, Mary Claire O'Leary has suggested that for our Christmas mission trip, we go down to that Mexican community down there on the west side. Oh, mon Dieu, what a life-defining moment. Those poor, frightened, confused, impoverished people, strangers in a strange land, imprisoned with a language barrier, and they were so kind and so sweet and just appreciative of every little thing we did. So I realized that I didn't have to go to Africa or South America. I had my mission right here in Kansas City. So I decided to join a group called the Agnes Ward Albert Club. They were social workers who devoted their time to the Mexican community. Good morning, ladies. Today we need to discuss that Mexican summer school. I have been talking to Father Jose Munoz, and he's the pastor at Our Lady of Guadalupe at 23rd and Madison. He has agreed to allow us to use his rectory. And you're all very familiar with the fact that there are no Spanish-speaking markets, schools, or even a church until Father came. So our first goal is to start English language classes for the children during the day, and then all ages in the evening, to try and destroy that communicative silence. And I think it would probably be advantageous to give the girls some sewing lessons. And I know they would love Sunday school, but we want to make sure that we don't proselytize like some of the other groups have. And Father has cautioned us to remember that we are working with Mexican immigrants, not European immigrants. If their culture is so foreign to us, just think about how foreign our culture is to them. These are people that exchanged their pristine mountain villages for railroad tracks and packing houses, and the noise and the hustle and the chaos of the city is terrifying to them. And what's even worse, the security of a family and extended family and friends is almost all gone. So Father feels like his church will bring a Spanish barrio where they can have community ties. He speaks Spanish, and Our Lady of Guadalupe is a patron saint of Mexico. It'll take time, but I think we can gain their trust, and I think we can make them feel safe here. Well, after a slow start, we quickly outgrew the rectory. And so my father had already passed away, but I convinced my mom and my sister Mary Louise to go in with me on 3 three buildings and bungalows on 23rd and Jarbo. We named them the Guadalupe Centers. And so then we were no longer in the Mexican community, we were a part of the Mexican community. And so I elected to go down there and live because that way I could learn about and listen to their needs. And I mean, they were having obstacles coming in from every corner. I'm not gonna rent to any of those greasers. Chili con carne, poof, poof, poof. They actually live in boxcars. I understand what you're saying, Miss Gallagher, but it's the policy of this hospital that we cannot admit any Mexicans, no matter what their needs. Well, the Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe Railroads actively recruited the Mexicans here after World War I, when the unskilled labor from Europe and Asia was halted. And they had to live in the boxcars. Several families would go together and rent small homes. And working 12, 15 hours a day, 6 days a week, there wasn't much time to adjust their home lives to our way of living. So, ladies, today we need to further discuss how we're going to help these people adjust to our standards of living and improve their home life. I was able to hire trained, Spanish-speaking, sympathetic housekeepers to go into these places and try to show them how they can adjust. Now we need to continue our visits, and we need to seek out the sick. But today is one of the happiest days of my life. You know how limited we are in our clinics. Well, we finally got the city health department to admit, with a Spanish-speaking interpreter, Mexicans to General Hospital. Thank God. Well, due to the increasing demands from the communities, we again outgrew our facilities. Somehow we had to expand. So I got my family to donate the land, and I myself drew up the plans, and then the architectural firm of Rainey and Cormac finalized those plans to a 2-story Spanish designed building at 1015 West 23rd. Much like the then just completed Country Club Plaza, we have brought a bit of the Spanish Southwest to Kansas City. We were now able to improve our classes. We were able eventually to have a gymnasium and dining room, a dental clinic, a children welfare place. We could do so much. We had a library with English and Spanish language books. We had a room where they could socialize, and we had we were able to instruct them on how to apply for jobs when they were newcomers. And then finally, on both sides of the state line, we were slowly able to improve their housing, even up to the point of ownership. And then our music classes led the way to the event which is the greatest preservation of Mexican culture, the fiesta. Yes. And then they could dress in their Spanish costumes, and they could dance. It was on the feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and it brought them such a great source of pride and self-esteem. And then eventually all the people in the area were coming, and it became a fundraiser. And then professionals who had availed themselves of our services, they would come back and volunteer. But now, after 18 years of being executive director, my work is done. The diocese has bought the centers, and they tell me there's need for my services in war-torn France. And when I return, I will then accept the teaching positions at the University of Kansas in Lawrence and St. Teresa's College here in Kansas City. And then, dear God, if my crystal ball serves me correctly, in 1968, at age 88, my mission on this earth will be done. But I leave behind the longest operating organization servicing Latin Americans in the whole United States. And they gave me the title of Godmother of Guadalupe. Hey, Salvador!
I got to Kansas City on a Friday. On Saturday I learned a thing or two. 'Cause up to then I didn't have an idea of what the modern world
Good
was.
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Jesse Clyde Nichols. But you can call me, and my friends and acquaintances call me just plain JC. I'm a local boy. Grew up on my parents' farm in Olathe, Kansas. Fancy that. Born in 1880. After high school, I was fortunate enough to go to the University of Kansas, where I did a lot of things. I managed the baseball team, and I worked for a newspaper, and I was also the class president. And I received a Bachelor of Arts degree from KU in 1902. And additionally received a scholarship from Harvard, believe it or not. I earned a second Bachelor of Arts degree from Harvard in 1903. And when I returned to Kansas City after a nice graduation gift of a bicycle trip through Europe, when I returned to Kansas City, I joined with a bunch of my college buddies, and we formed a real estate development company. And in 1905, I married my childhood sweetheart, Jessie Miller. She was kind of the love of my life, and she was also from Olathe. Our sons, we had two, were Miller and Clyde, and we eventually lived on Ward Parkway. J.E. Dunn of the J.E. Dunn Construction Company and we were friends, developed some commercial property in Kansas City, Kansas. And we both liked Spanish architecture and envisioned a commercial shopping area along State Avenue. If you go over there today, you'll see some of those buildings with the Spanish architecture. And I guess you could maybe imagine that that would have been the Country Club Plaza. But there were people in Kansas City, Kansas and Wyandotte County who were politicians, and maybe they were on the take, we're not sure, but anyway, they wouldn't zone property for us. So we had to look elsewhere for our place, and we did find some swampy land along Brush Creek. Oh, you've heard of that. We had to pave the creek and put up rock walls so we could drain it out, and that became the basis for the Country Club Plaza. Now, I had a lot to do with the planning of the Country Club Plaza, although we had seen a lot of communities and planned developments. And so when I was doing this, people would look at my drawings and they would say, Mr. Nichols, there's blank spots here in between these buildings. Aren't you going to put buildings in all these spaces? And I said, no, those are for parking lots for parking cars. And they said, well, who would drive a car to go shopping? I think we call them auto malls now. Anyway. That was the best thing I probably ever did, was think about where the cars were going to be something else. The company proceeded with construction and leasing on the plaza, and I was fortunate enough to think about, or they say I invented, the percentage lease, where rents are based on tenants' gross receipts instead of just a fixed amount per month. And the first stores in the plaza opened in 1923. And as most of you know, at Christmas or during the holiday time, all the buildings are decorated with colorful Christmas lights. And that goes on today. Now, I called my method of establishing residential subdivisions planning for permanence. And the Country Club District was formed and adjoined the plaza to the south. All homeowners were required to belong to the district's homeowners association, which monitored how well the homeowners maintained their lawns and buildings, and also provided for trash and garbage collection and street cleaning, and statuary, etc., and so on, around the properties. Builders were required to observe large minimum lot sizes and large setbacks from the street. And I also, to my somewhat regret, imposed restrictive covenants based on race and religion on all properties in the district. I might say that the restrictions on Jews were lifted shortly after they were placed there. 1948, the Supreme Court banned all of those such covenants. I did try to be involved in civic life, such as creation of the Liberty Memorial, the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art, and the Midwest Research Institute. Also, Kansas City University, which is now the University of Missouri at Kansas City. You know, I never considered myself racist. I did have black friends. We needed a restaurant in Olathe, which I still visited, being my home or my parents' home. And I did bring a little African-American woman to Olathe area because I wanted to help her set up a good restaurant. We needed one. And she did so well that she started her own place at 15th and Brooklyn called Ruby's Soul Food. Some of you have been there. Her name was Ruby McIntyre. The restaurant was very successful and loved by one and all, and especially the members of the Kansas City Police Department who kind of adopted her. My greatest wish in my career was that Kansas City would be a truly beautiful city. I think I made some of that wish happen. Thank you. Mr. Nichols contracted cancer in 1950 and died at age 69.
We interrupt this program for a special announcement. Newsflash, Nellie Dunn, fashion designer and prominent Kansas City businesswoman, was kidnapped from in front of her home approximately 4 hours ago at 6 p.m., along with her chauffeur, George Blair. Nellie Dunn is 42 years of age with red hair. The public is asked to notify police if they have any information regarding this incident. That is all. We now return you to regularly scheduled programming.
George, I can hardly see in this darkness. Oh, George, are you all right? Oh, George, I think they may have given you a concussion. Oh, George. No, don't even try to talk. Oh, my goodness, I don't know where we are. I didn't tell them that, you know, about being pregnant to save myself. No, I really am. But I haven't told anyone. I haven't even told Paul, my husband. Probably won't tell him.
Oh, we're way out in the country, miles from town. No sign of help. What do we do in this dark? We wait. All we can do is just wait. Is that sunrise coming up? Oh, I usually sleep right through it. George, I'm so scared. Oh no, George, please, please don't try and talk. I know it hurts too much. They could have even broken your jaw. How about I just do all the talking as usual. Oh yeah, it's been a long time. I don't know what we're gonna do out here now. You're probably wondering though about the baby and why I haven't told my husband. Well, it's quite a story. Yeah, quite a story. You see, it isn't his. You've probably noticed, though, that Paul's become a terrible alcoholic over these last few years. Oh, it probably isn't easy being married to, what is it they call me? Prominent Kansas City businesswoman. But you know, a woman needs love. A woman's got to feel love and be loved. Success isn't everything. Success sure isn't love. Darkness coming on already? Oh, I thought last night was bad enough. Tonight's going to be even worse. Oh, I am so scared. What is today, anyway? I don't know. It's been 24 hours at least since anyone has even come. What day? December 14th. That's what it is, December 14th. Yesterday was the 13th. It's just a week till Christmas. And then New Year's. 1932. Oh, George. We will see 1932. We've just got to get through this darkness first. George, I can't sleep. I can't sleep either. Can you? I mean, it helps me to talk. So if it's okay, that it helps you to listen. Well, I'm just gonna talk. Prominent Kansas City businesswoman. Oh, they say it like it's something you're just born with. Well, I wasn't. Oh, God knows I wasn't. I'm one of 13 children born to Irish immigrants. All I ever had were hand-me-downs. I guess that's why I like clothes so much. You know, even as a little girl, I just loved to sew. And I knew when I grew up, I wanted to make pretty dresses for women of all sizes. And I did. And when I took those first dresses around to all the department stores in Kansas City, you know what? They laughed at me. Hey, yeah, they just laughed. They said, what woman's going to pay $1 for a dress? Well, finally, Mr. Peck, you know of Peck and Peck, ordered 216 dresses on consignment. But he wanted them in 2 months. Well, I got a few friends together and I hired a few others, and we finished those 216 dresses right on time. They sold out in a couple of weeks. Oh yeah. 1929 is when this depression started. We were only doing seasonal work back then, you know, spring and fall. But now, my employees needed salaries year-round because many of them became the sole breadwinner for the family. That's when I came up with my handy-dandy apron. Nothing like it before. Oh, pretty fabrics, and very practical too. It had pockets on each side. Oh, it was a huge success. Now they could have salaries year-round. And you know what? Next year, we're going to be making over 1 million dresses a year. Oh, yes. Well, I've even signed a lease on a second office there in New York City, right in the Empire State Building. Oh, yes. I've got so many plans for the company. Why, I'm going to set up a medical plan and life insurance. And then I'll have a retirement plan, and for all the employees, I'll have a scholarship program for them and their children. Well, just think of that, George. Your children will be able to go to college. I'll put a medical facility right on the premises, and I'll always pay the highest salaries in the industry. Oh, yes, George. I've decided. This old world can't do without me just yet. I guess you're wondering about the baby's father. I didn't tell you that. I'm carrying the baby of Senator James A. Reed. Oh, he's a wonderful man and so influential. Well, I bet he heard about this right after it happened. Why, he would have gone right to City Hall and the police and demanded action. Oh, yeah. He would have called all the reporters. He wouldn't stop there. He'd go straight to Johnny Lazia, another mob boss. Oh, if Johnny Lazia gets his boys out there, these thugs won't want to mess with them. I'll bet right now there are hundreds, thousands of people all over Jackson County just searching for us right this minute. And George, they're going to find us, I'm telling you. George, don't cry. Don't cry. You've just got to have gumption. You've just got to stand up to life. And you just got to believe. No, I haven't been through all of this and worked like a damn dog all these years to have it end like this. No, sir, no kidnappers or strikers or unions or anything else is going to stop us. I'm telling you the truth. They are going to find us, George. They are. Why is it so light out there? Well, it can't be more than 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. It's too early for dawn. George, there's 20 or 30 cars out there. And there must be 100 men with guns. Oh, George, it's Johnny Lazia. And he's brought the cops. Oh, George, they found us. I told you so. Nellie Dunn sold her business when she was 67 years old and retired. She also remained very, very active in politics and also philanthropic organizations right up to when she passed away at age 102.
Greetings again! For the last several years, I've specialized in crime reporting, and I found a story of a mystery that took place 110 years ago, the very year that Merry Widow was the rage. What is this? It is the alleged murder of Thomas Swope. Not only Thomas Swope, but several members of his family. And to use the title of a cable broadcast station, an unsolved mystery. So, please, because Colonel Swope is not here to tell the story, I want you to help me delve into the facts, what we know about something I've been obsessing about concerning this enigmatic story that goes back to 1909. If you have been around Kansas City for any length of time, you're familiar with the name Thomas Swope, probably because of the 1,300-acre park that he donated to the city. Today, his memorial sits grandly in the park that bears his name. First, a little background to him, I'll tell you. Thomas Swope was born on October 21st, 1827 in Lincoln County, Kentucky. He went to Center College in Kentucky and went to Yale Law School, but he never practiced law. He became interested in real estate. Moved first to New York, St. Louis, and eventually settled right here in Kansas City. He became, I'm going to read this directly, he became the largest individual landowner of his time in Kansas City. We're not sure who dubbed him Colonel Swope, because he certainly wasn't in the military, but the name stuck. He had 2 sisters and 2 brothers. One brother, Logan Swope, died in 1900. Logan's widow, Maggie, and most of their children resided in a stately home, really a mansion, just southwest of the square in Independence, Missouri. Colonel Thomas, confirmed bachelor, at the time of his death lived in the southwest bedroom of that house, as well as his only close friend, his genial cousin, James Moss Huntoon. Swope acquired quite an estate. His will, according to his, his property, according to his will, was valued at $3,600,000. That's $70 million today. That money, at his death, was to be divided among his sister-in-law and her 7 children. However, and the family was aware, the residuary of the money was to go $1,500,000 today, $3 million, to charity. On October 1st, 1909, in the Swope mansion, Swope's cousin and friend, James Moss Huntoon, died suddenly and dramatically. Funeral arrangements were made for him the next day. 2 coffins were ordered. Why? Thomas Swope died in a similar manner just 2 days later. And a mere 2 months later, on December 5th, a cousin, Christman Swope, died in the same house. And 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, in that house, 7 family members came down with typhoid fever. Was this a house of death? A reporter in 1909 wrote these words: 3 deaths occurred, and several other Swope family members were struck with typhoid, the disease that found no place else in the town. This led some to suspect that foul play and a plot to plunder the momentous Swope fortune. There was a common denominator. His name was Bennett Clark Hyde. Hyde was raised in nearby Lexington, Missouri, and received a degree from University Medical College in Kansas City. 1909, while in school, Hyde was arrested for hiring 2 men to rob graves. Although he was charged and arrested, the case was dropped on March 4th of that year. It seems that robbing graves of cadavers for study was not unusual. Soon after graduating, Hyde was appointed police surgeon, that's medical examiner, the city of Kansas City. However, Bennett Hyde incurred the wrath of Maggie. You remember Margaret Swope? She's Thomas's widow's sister-in-law. Because in June 1905, Hyde secretly wed Maggie's daughter, Frances Swope, in Fayetteville, Arkansas. That absolutely infuriated Maggie. She accused Hyde of marrying Frances for the Swope money, arguing this, you'll love this, arguing that Hyde had already made love to 2 other wealthy women and had thrown them over after conning them out of their money. He was certainly disfavored by Maggie and perhaps the rest of the family for eloping with Frances. However, because Hyde was the doctor, he was the one who was called in when Colonel Swope, then 81 years old, fell ill on September 5th, 1909. While Swope remained in bed on the evening of October 1st, 1909, his cousin James Huntoon also fell ill at the Swope home, and Dr. Hyde, as well as the family doctor, also cared for Huntoon. After drawing a pint of Huntoon's blood, a common practice, and without any heed of the family's doctor's instruction that a pint of blood was enough, Hyde ignored the advice, and according to court records, Francis Hyde said, "Dear, I would quit now. Dr. Thyman thinks you've bled him quite enough." Hyde quit, and almost immediately, Huntoon gave a spasmodic gasp and died. In spite of Huntoon's death, though, Thomas seemed to feel better. Nevertheless, Dr. Hyde gave Nurse Keller a digestive tablet with instructions to give it to her patient, Thomas Swope. After much persuasion, the nurse finally induced the old man to swallow it, and 20 minutes later, he was seized with violent convulsions. During his conscious moments, he said, oh God, I wish I hadn't taken the damn medicine." The family doctor was not called. The circumstances were suspicious. And on the evening of October 3rd, Colonel Swope died. Similar pills were given to the ill cousin, Chrisman Swope, a few months later, along with morphine for restlessness, and yes, he died. Then there's the matter of the typhoid. Prior to October 1st, 1909, Dr. Hyde drank cistern water from the Swope home, water used by the entire family. But about this time, he notified the family that if they drank the water without boiling it, they would all be stricken with typhoid fever. On Thanksgiving Day, Dr. and Mrs. Hyde arrived with their own bottled water. Within 2 weeks, after the Thanksgiving dinner, 7 family members, servants, and visiting friends were struck with typhoid. The family, especially Maggie, whose suspicions had begun years before, of course, became absolutely more incensed and requested an inquiry. There was a long trial with prosecutor James A. Reed, expert witnesses, countering testimony, and when it all ended, finally, in the spring of 1910, Dr. Hyde stood convicted of murder. The circumstantial evidence was very convincing. However, that conviction was overturned on appeal, and after 2 more trials, finally the state of Missouri put a stop to it. And the case against Bennett Clark Hyde was put to rest. His life, however, had changed forever. After the final acquittal of 1914, his wife, by 1920, divorced him. And by then, he had lost his practice and had been expelled from the Jackson County Medical Society. Hyde died of suspected brain hemorrhage in his hometown, where he is buried, Lexington, Missouri. Eventually, the Swope family saga ended, moved into obscurity, and except for a few lingering stories that have lasted for years, today the mansion of death, sickness, foul play is gone, torn down in the 1960s. The Swope family long since left the area, but the mystery surrounding the causes of these deaths, the illnesses, the mystery continues.
Thank you so much. And thanks for just join us for refreshments in the lobby, and we'll be happy to just tell you everything there ever was needed to know about anybody.